So I'm talking about property rights and resiliency. But really what I want to talk about is, what I want to get to is climate and climate change. We're going to build up to it. And sort of talk about how we should be thinking about climate change in terms of, I'm an economist in the Agri-Resources Econ Department at NC State, and economists have spent a long time thinking about how to think about land value and how land value is going to be affected, how crop choices and things like that are going to be affected by a changing climate. And so that's going to be informed by what's happened in the past as well. So to start out with, I just want to talk about ag land values, right? And so here's a map, the darker colors. This is the total value of ag land in each county in North Carolina. This is 2012 data. But you can see like the lighter counties have between $14 and $150 million worth of ag land in the county, and then Wake County has some of the most valued ag land in the county, between $610 and $1.2 billion worth of ag, right? So when you're thinking about this, when you're looking at this, you're probably thinking, well, that doesn't quite make sense, it doesn't quite square with what I think about, because Wake County doesn't produce that many crops compared to these other counties. And you're right, so ag land value, right, is going to be made up of two components, right? And so the first component is going to be the crop sales, right? So any land that's in agriculture is going to be producing crops each year. If you own your land, you're getting the profits from that land. If you rent your land, right, it's the rent that you're paying for the land. It's kind of like the income each year. And so I've sort of extruded up for North Carolina where the crop sales per acre in the state are the highest, right? And it happens that they're the highest out in the western part of the state, in part because the western part of the state has very little good ag land, but what it does have is producing some high-value crops. And so, but you can sort of see this is going to be one component. So each year you get some rent from your land, or you produce crops and you get some profit from your land out into the future, right? Right up until the land, and this is really important when you're thinking about Wake County, up until the land is converted out of agriculture into some other use, right? And so the second figure I have here is the population density in the state of extruded outdoors. And so you can see here, maybe I'll go back to this one here. You can see we have these hot spots where ag land is really valuable, right in the triangle area, right in Wake County and so on. And part of that is that at the end of the day, part of an ag land value is the conversion value that goes into it. Now this is going to be important when we think about how climate affects the value of your land, the value of your farmland, right? Because climate is going to affect your crop sales, and I'm going to talk a lot about that in the second half of the presentation. How climate affects the ability to grow crops, and what crops you can grow, and how much you can earn off that. It's less clear, especially in Wake County, how much climate is going to affect your conversion value, right? As long as people are still wanting to move into Wake County, right, then these values are still going to remain. So what climate is affecting is your ability to grow crops, not necessarily your conversion value. Now, this calculus doesn't work as well if you're on the coast, where climate might be affecting things like flooding and additional hurricanes and things like that. But I haven't seen any indications or any predictions that population growth is going to slow in Wake County. So this is going to remain a crucial component of ag land values. So I'm an economist. I talk a lot about water and water resource management in agriculture, but I'm also a bit of an economic historian, so I like to look back at the trends in the past. So here we have a graph going back to 1900 of total land and farms just in Wake County, right? And in 1900, there was about 500 million acres 500 million acres. 500,000, sorry, 500,000 acres in farms in Wayne County. And you can see just, it's pretty level up until the post-war period. And so you can imagine that this decreasing trend is going to correspond with the influx of people moving to Wayne County. And so today, we're at around a little under 100,000 acres in farms in the county, right? Over that same time, right? And I don't know how easy this is going to be to see. It's a little bit all over the place, but I'll explain it. We have seen a dramatic shift in what crops are grown. And I gave this talk in Franklin County, which is right next door, and they have less population pressure, but exactly the same trends, right? In 1900, right, and then up until World War II, just about 60% of land and crops in Wayne County was in cotton and corn, right? So it was all cotton and corn, and that's changed, right? It's hardly any cotton. Well, there's no cotton, it looks like, really being grown in the county now, at least statistically, close to zero, and very little corn. And what crops are being grown is other crops, but primarily soybeans is the big four, right? Now, I want you to keep that in mind because what I'm going to be talking about, now, I can't tell you exactly why this changed. There's probably a combination of things, right? New technology, new seeds, more demand for soybeans relative to cotton and corn, relative prices of cotton and corn relative to soybeans, things like that. One thing to remember is this is 100 years. A lot of things happen in 100 years. So I'm going to be talking about the past 100 years and then the next 100 years. And so I'm going to put up some estimates, but we got to think there's a lot of stuff that will happen, a lot of changes will happen. So now I want to talk about climate change, right? We're going to start small. We're going to talk about climate change that we know has already happened, right? So we're not talking about models, we're not talking about predictions. This is just weather stations data for the Southeast, right? And we've seen, some of you may, long you've been around the more, you may have noticed some of these changes and trends in the Southeast. Precipitation since 1900 has increased about 30% on average. So the average year has 30% more precipitation now than it did in 1900, right? So, but here you see a map of the seasons, and you see all that precipitation increases occurring in the fall, right? So the other thing we've seen in North Carolina, in addition to these huge precipitation increases, are decreases in, or increases in drought, basically decreases in summertime precipitation, up to 30% as well, right? So we're wetter in the fall, right? Hurricane season, there's wet, there's not hurricanes, there's more storms, there's more precipitation, but we're drier in the summer and even some in the late spring, which is when crops potentially might want some rain, right? You don't really need it in the fall when you're already done harvesting. So this is important, right? So how do we adapt to climate and especially changes in water availability on the farm, right? So I have two historic photographs. This picture is actually Firestone and Ford looking at an early irrigation system using Firestone tires. And then this is some folks digging a drainage ditch in North Carolina. I'm pretty sure I got it from North Carolina, right? So if you have too much water, you need to get it off your land, you build a drainage ditch. If you have too little water, you need to get it on your land, build an irrigation system. Well, based on this last slide, right, in North Carolina, we're trying to have both, right? Too much water on the land, that 30% decrease in precipitation, and too little, the decrease in summertime precipitation. So what do we see in terms of adaptation in North Carolina? Well, the first thing is coastal plain, you drain, right? These counties have at least 60% of all their farmland has underground drainage. Typically, it's going to be PVC pipe laid underground. But if you drive around some areas in the eastern part of the state, you see actual ditches, just parallel ditches running through the fields and pull the water off the land. So in Wake County, we're actually fairly low in terms of the adoption of drainage, somewhere in the, a little bit, but not very much at the present, right? And that has to do with soils, it has to do with slope, right? We're not as flat, and we're not as wet. But if precipitation continues to increase, right, drainage is one potential way to get the water off the land. Now, farms to irrigation, you see that Wake County is actually one of the leading counties in the state in terms of percentage of irrigation, and actually over 30% of farms in the state have some form of irrigation, the ability to irrigate, right? In the county. And I actually moved out to North Carolina from the western US, from Idaho originally. And what you see in the west is a lot of irrigation just to grow crops, right? So you have kind of a desert, and this is usually how we think about irrigation. You have a desert, you build a dam, you build an irrigation canal, and that allows you to grow something, otherwise it would just be dust and some tumbleweeds. In the east, irrigation is different, right? In the average year, we have plenty of water to grow whatever we want to grow. But what we're seeing more and more, and today 30% of all irrigated land in the country is east of the Mississippi, right? We're seeing more and more is farmers putting in irrigation systems just to deal with small blips in irrigation. Maybe that 1 out of 5 years when there isn't enough rainfall in the summer to get your crop growing, or potentially just to keep your yields high during those small drought periods, right? And so that's the trend we see. So these are our adaptation measures that have happened, and this is sort of the state of the world now. So what about going forward, right? And so I've just thrown up some maps of climate projections. Here is the precipitation change by season. To summarize a little bit what's going to happen in the southeast, it's a lot, the predictions are looking a lot like what happened over the past 100 years, just more so, right? More precipitation in the spring, but also less precipitation in the summer, drier summers, right? And here is, I think, the one that's really interesting. Maximum number of dry days are going to be increasing in North Carolina by 10 to 15%, right? So if your normal summer has 10 dry days, now we're at 11 or 12 dry days on average, which means the length of the big droughts and the dry years can be even larger, right? So now, what can we do with these numbers, right? Well, we can take these numbers and we can think about how do crops respond to changes in precipitation and temperature, right? And we have these big error bands here because we're predicting this for every county in the US and then sort of showing what the potential response of corn, soybeans, cotton, and wheat are to precipitation and then also to temperature, right? And what you see, and what's really interesting, and I didn't know this until I started this project, I'm sure people who farm in here do know this, is crops are very sensitive to temperature, especially hot temperatures, much more so than they are to precipitation. And so you see these big kind of nonlinear drops in crop production, crop yields, when you get these high temperatures, right? And so what we might be concerned about if we think climate's changing, and especially if the world's getting hotter, is that we're more and more in this range and our yields are going to be going down more and more. Right? So here's here's how I like to phrase this. There's a lot of models, right? There's a lot of different scenarios on how we think about what might happen under a changing climate, right? And so one thing we think might happen is there'd be no change, right? In which case it would be the same as today. Then I take what would be like a high scenario, almost a worst case or a bad case, maybe not worst case, but bad case scenario. And so I'm going to show you the results from a bad case scenario, and you can sort of think about, in between this today, no change, versus the bad case scenario, where we might be at. So in the bad case scenario, this is what happens to average temperature. So these are each little states, and we'll show you North Carolina. The average summertime temperatures for the entire state go from a little over 75 degrees to right around 85 degrees in temperature, right? I've heard for Raleigh specifically, under like the more extreme scenarios, Raleigh's going to be, the weather's going to be like what Tallahassee is today, right? So I don't know if you've been to Tallahassee in the summer. You know, moving from the west, Raleigh in the summer feels bad, but Tallahassee in the summer is really bad, right? It's hot, it's wet, muggy at least. Right, well, if you think about what's going to happen to the crops we can grow and growing conditions, when there shifts, well, things are going to have to shift, right? Things are going to change. And so what we do, and again, this is going to be hard to see back there, is I look at what we're growing right now, right, in the state, right? So these are the 10-year crop frequencies in the state. We've got corn, soybeans, wheat, and cotton. And you see Wake County, there's not a lot, right, especially not in the western part of the county, but in the south and east, you can see there's a significant amount of soybeans that sort of corresponds to that graph I showed you earlier. So what is being grown is generally soybeans. But we can say, well, let's say we keep growing the same things and we have the same response function in each county that we've had in the past to climate. What's going to happen to production in the state, right? And so here is the percentage decrease or increase in ag profits, essentially. You know, ag profits are not calculated necessarily the way we think of profits, but basically the value above the cost of inputs of the crops and how they're going to change, right? And so the blue is going to increase, means ag profits are going to increase. The red and orange are going to decrease, right? And so I forgot to point out on the last slide, we go to cotton, we see that there's not a lot of cotton grown most years in a lot of part of the state, except for this sort of northeast, a little bit inland part. And I also want to point out, one slide back, 3 slides back, cotton's response function to temperature, that heat is much higher than for corn and soy. Right? Cotton is better in the heat than other crops. So that's important because you see the places that are growing cotton right now actually see increases under climate. This bad climate here, right? It's going to get hotter, it's going to get drier in the summer, right? The cotton areas can do well. The rest of the state, generally not so well, right? Wake County, not so well. Now, one thing I like to do point out with this is the percentage change over current ag production, right? So Wake County is going to see somewhere between a 15 and 30% decrease in ag profits in the next 15 years, right? Assuming that we maintain the same responses that we have in the past, right? And so what I like to do, though, is scale this up, and I don't know how you can see this, but scale it up by the total value of ag production in each county. So we can sort of see that some of those, especially in the western state, those big losers, percentage-wise, aren't producing that much ag value. Where we're really going to lose a lot of value is sort of in this coastal plain. They're growing, you know, they're growing basically soybeans and then rotating with corn and maybe mostly rotating with corn and some wheat, right? Big, both percentage losses and total aggregate losses. So to wrap it up, what I'd like to say is start thinking about how climate is going to affect ag production in the state. These losses could be fairly large. But we made some really big assumptions, right? First, we just looked at the big 4 crops. There's a lot of other agricultural production in the state that needs to be looked at. But we're assuming a similar crop mix going forward, so we can change crops. We can even find new seed varieties and things like that that would do better in this changing temperature. And then the water management is going to be big, right? So adding irrigation, adding drainage where it's needed could also help to adapt and sort of mitigate some of these potential costs of a changing climate. So with that, I'll conclude and I think I have a few minutes for some questions.
Any questions for Eric? What he went over? Comment, anything? Of course, oh yes, please.
Has there been any talk about how hemp and cannabis, but hemp specifically, would be effective in changing this and
Yeah, I don't know anything about hemp. What I would say is the way to think about that would be, is hemp more or less sensitive to climate than these other crops? I'm guessing it's probably more sensitive, just given that these crops are so widespread, which will probably mean that if there's a certain region that's very good for growing hemp right now, that's the same thing way to think about these other specialty crops, right? There's a certain region or area that's very good for growing a specialty crop. You have to think very specifically about how climate is going to affect those particular microclimate and growing conditions. Yeah, that's all I can say. I don't know that much about it.
We've seen some of that already with some of the farmers that moved into agriculture in Wake County, that, the irrigation is a big key. And having that set up before they're already seeing some problems with that, at least having irrigation. So, and those water needs in that land. So.
And one thing I should mention is irrigation is also appears, we're still working on the paper right now, but appears to be historically a very big factor that farmers use to adapt to heat, right? So if you irrigate, the crop's response to higher temperatures is to take more water and evaporate it to cool themselves off. So if you can irrigate your crops, you can adapt.